You're so lucky, because I've been reading these articles lately and being amazed at how particular some people's jobs are. I've been studying snowflakes. And there are people at universities, like Caltech University and stuff, and all they do, they've devoted their entire lives to studying the crystalline nature of snowflakes. That's pretty particular. And at dinner parties, you probably run out of things to talk about. I've been reading this essay on the dental, the plaque and remnants of plaque on the teeth of Neanderthals. And the woman who wrote this book, it's a pretty specific thing to do for a living. You guys are, this is going to segue beautifully, you guys are in what seems to be an incredibly generalistic craft, which is you guys are studying life in all its shapes and forms and sizes. You need to run from the general towards the specific, and you need to become specifists, because what we do is about specificity, and I'll explain more of that in a little while. But what you need to do is you need to become incredibly adept at researching. And the beautiful thing is that there are only 30 specimens of Neanderthal teeth out there, but and so many photographs of snowflakes. But there are 7 billion people on this planet, and there's also been billions of people who have lived on this planet. And we have recorded history and 100 years of film, and we have books, and we have documentaries and videotapes and interviews, and your research laboratory is the world. And so all day long you guys get to become specialists in what's around you, and you need to be constantly ingesting and absorbing and bringing in as much behavioral cognitive understanding as you can. You need to be out there studying what it means to be constantly. It's so great. I mean, you've chosen this, so it's not really lucky. It's an opportunity that you've created. So it's in some ways a privilege. But now that you've called yourselves actor, you need to actually do it, which means you now have the duty, the responsibility to go out and fulfill that mandate, which is to understand life. So actors have this weird dichotomous situation. They have one foot in and one foot out of the world. The one foot in, the one foot out, is that you're standing outside of life looking back at it. So you're having an argument with your father, and right in the middle of the argument with your father goes, and you go, oh, that's really interesting. I memorized that. You know? Or like, I'm going to talk about Joy Voice, but I flipped my car off a cliff. I live on Bowen Island, and I flipped my car off my cliff. I live in a place called Highland Trail. It's extremely well named. And so I drove off that highland and actually flipped my car 3 times off the cliff with my son in the back seat. And he rolled out of his car seat. It was one of the worst days of my life. As the coffee, cold coffee left over from the day before, was splashing my face and the glass was caving in, and I could see my child's body moving in the rearview mirror, and we're talking about microseconds. I went into shock. I'll tell you what happened post facto. Once we got to the hospital, we had to ambulance and then water taxi and ambulance again. And once, I'm getting tense when I'm talking about it. Once we got to the hospital and he was okay, it took 8 hours for them to nothing happened to him at all. He chipped his tooth. I actually had a severe concussion, but I had been refusing any kind of medication or anything. And in the back of the ambulance drivers kept on yelling at me, "Sit down!" And I kept on saying, "Fuck you," because I was flicking lights off and on, the ambulance lights, so my kid would be distracted so he wouldn't cry, knowing that he's in traction, And then, when they finally told me he was fine, I went into paroxysms of post-facto shock. And the next day, they couldn't get me out of the hospital. My sister had to talk me to the hospital because I knew something was wrong with him, Anyway, in that split second where I'm looking through that rearview mirror and I'm feeling the coffee on my face and the glass is caving in and I can see Ethan's little green coat moving behind me, I'm thinking to myself, fuck, this is good for my acting. Do you also notice how memorized the image is? You also notice how I go back to that image and I'm already back into that emotional place? So you have a foot outside of life and you're looking back in. May I say, we'll come back to it, but do you know what that is, that little voice? We call it, it's good for my acting. I call it the joy voice, which is there's a voice inside of you. It's deep, 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 deep inside of you. And it's hard to find sometimes. It's incredibly hard to find when you're extricating your mother out of your life and putting her in the hands of police officers because she's crazy. It's incredibly hard to find when you're hanging onto the pipes in the basement of your theater school because your fiance just broke your heart. Sometimes it's really hard to find when you're burying your child, when you find out that your relative has cancer and is dying, you know? But deep inside of you, deep, deep, deep inside of your soul is a little voice. And the little voice says, I'm alive. And there is no other definition to joy but that. You're alive.